If that trail belongs to someone who needs help, I'm not turning away. Emily Carter whispered the words to herself before she understood how much they were about to cost her. 3 drops of red marked the pale marble floor of Frosthaven Palace, bright against the silver moonlight spilling through the corridor windows. Emily stopped with a folded blanket in her arms, listening. Nothing. At nearly midnight, the royal wing should have been silent, yet something about the stillness felt wrong. She lowered the blanket and crouched beside the nearest drop. Fresh. A second waited several feet ahead, then another farther down the hall. The trail continued beneath portraits of long-dead kings, and toward the oldest section of the palace. Every sensible instinct told her to find a guard. Emily had survived 3 years as an Omega servant by understanding one rule better than anyone. Stay unnoticed. In Frosthaven, rank determined which doors opened for you and which ones you were expected to pretend did not exist. Emily had become very good at pretending. Tonight she couldn't. A faint sound reached her from somewhere ahead. A whimper. Emily straightened. Hello. No answer came. She followed the trail, her soft shoes barely making a sound against the stone. 50 feet later, the warm palace lamps ended and the corridor narrowed beneath an arched ceiling. Emily knew this passage. Everyone did. At its end stood the abandoned royal chapel, sealed by direct order of King Adrian Blackwood. No servant entered it. No noble questioned it. Even palace guards avoided speaking about it. Emily slowed when the chapel appeared through the darkness. Its tall wooden doors were carved with wolves beneath a crescent moon, and one door stood open barely an inch. Another red drop rested on the threshold. Her heartbeat quickened. She should leave. She should call someone with authority, someone whose name mattered in this palace. Then the sound came again. Softer this time. A frightened little cry from behind the door. Emily forgot about rank. She forgot about punishment. Something small was inside and it sounded alone. She placed the blanket on the floor and moved closer. Cold air slipped through the opening, carrying the scent of pine, winter, and something strangely familiar. Her fingers hovered over the door. I'm coming in, she whispered, more to whatever waited beyond than to herself. She pushed. Ancient hinges murmured as the forbidden chapel opened into moonlit darkness. Broken stained glass painted the floor in faded blue and silver. Emily took one cautious step inside, then another. The trail continued toward the altar. A low sound rolled from the shadows. Not a whimper this time. A warning. Emily froze. 2 enormous silver eyes opened beyond the altar, followed by the outline of a white wolf larger than any she had ever seen. Behind its body, 3 tiny shapes huddled together. 3 pups. And one of them was crying. Emily forgot how to breathe. The white wolf did not move, but it did not need to. Even lying beside the altar, it seemed powerful enough to fill the entire chapel. Its thick white coat almost glowing beneath the moonlight. Its silver eyes remained fixed on her with an intelligence that made Emily certain this was no ordinary animal. She slowly raised both hands. I am not going to hurt you. The wolf answered with another low warning, and Emily stopped immediately. Behind it, the 3 pups pressed closer together. They were young, perhaps only a few months old, with pale coats ranging from cream to silver. One watched her with frightened blue eyes. Another kept its face hidden against the wolf. The smallest lay near the edge of the altar steps, trembling beneath the cold air drifting through the broken windows. Emily's fear changed shape. She was still afraid of the enormous wolf, but concern was stronger now. They are freezing, she whispered. The wolf's ears shifted at her voice. Emily glanced back toward the blanket she had left outside. It was less than 20 feet away, yet turning her back on those silver eyes felt impossible. She moved carefully toward the doorway, retrieved the blanket and returned. The wolf tracked every step. See? That is all. She lowered herself to the floor and placed the blanket several feet away, then pushed it gently across the stone. The smallest pup tried to move toward it but stopped after only a few inches. Emily's chest tightened. Something was wrong. She could see it now in the pup's shallow breathing, and the way the other 2 stayed protectively close. Her Omega instincts, so often dismissed by others as weakness, were telling her what rank and rules could not. The little creature needed help. Emily looked at the white wolf. I need to get closer. Its gaze hardened. I know you do not trust me. She swallowed. You should not. You do not know me. Another tiny cry came from behind the wolf, and Emily saw its expression change. Not weakness. Worry. Deep, unmistakable worry. Suddenly she understood that this magnificent creature was not guarding treasure or territory. It was guarding children. Emily lowered her eyes, making herself as unthreatening as possible. I was not supposed to come here, she said softly. If anyone finds me, I will probably lose my position. But I heard them and I could not walk away. Silence settled over the chapel. Then something extraordinary happened. The white wolf slowly lifted its head and shifted several inches aside. It was not much, but it opened a narrow path toward the pups. Emily stared at it. Permission. Somehow she knew that was what it meant. She moved forward on her knees, slowly enough to stop if the wolf changed its mind. 5 feet. 3. 2. The smallest pup suddenly went still. Emily's heart dropped. Oh no. She reached forward, and the white wolf rose behind her. Emily felt its presence tower over her, close enough that she could hear every breath. Still she did not retreat. She gently gathered the tiny pup into the blanket and held it against her chest. Stay with me, little one, she whispered. The pup gave the faintest movement. Relief rushed through her. Then Emily noticed something beneath its pale fur. Something small and metallic caught against the blanket. She carefully lifted it into the moonlight. Her breath stopped again. Engraved into the metal was the royal crest of Frosthaven. Emily turned the small piece of metal between her fingers, letting the moonlight slide across the engraved wolf and crown. She had seen that crest every day since arriving at Frosthaven Palace. It was stamped into official letters, carved above the throne room doors, and embroidered onto the uniforms of the royal guard. Only members of King Adrian Blackwood's household were permitted to carry it. Yet this one had been hidden beneath the fur of a frightened pup inside a chapel no one was allowed to enter. Who are you? Emily whispered. The pup shifted weakly against her chest. Behind her, the white wolf released a quiet breath. Emily looked over her shoulder and found those silver eyes watching the metal in her hand. Something changed in the animal's expression. Recognition, then concern. Emily slowly placed the crest on the blanket. You know what this is. The wolf stepped forward. In the moonlight, Emily finally noticed how carefully it favored one side. The white fur along its shoulder was stained dark, and although the wolf remained steady, exhaustion showed in every measured breath. Emily's fear faded beneath a stronger instinct. You are hurt too. The wolf immediately straightened, almost offended by the observation. Despite everything, Emily nearly smiled. Fine. You are extremely terrifying and completely healthy. One of the other pups made a tiny sound, and the wolf looked toward it at once. That simple movement told Emily everything she needed to know. Whatever had happened before she entered this chapel, the wolf had spent whatever strength it possessed protecting these three. Emily wrapped the smallest pup more securely and examined the other two without touching them. They seemed frightened and cold but alert. I need something warm, she murmured. And water. Her eyes moved toward the chapel doors. Leaving meant finding supplies, but it also meant risking discovery. Emily glanced back at the royal crest. She could report everything. That was what a sensible servant would do. Find a guard. Find the steward. Tell someone important. Yet a strange uneasiness settled inside her. If these pups belonged to the royal household, why were they hidden in an abandoned chapel instead of protected in the palace? Why was the white wolf alone with them? And why had there been a trail of blood through empty corridors without a single guard following it? Emily looked at the wolf. Someone should already be looking for you. Its ears lifted. But nobody is. The chapel suddenly felt colder. Emily remembered the palace kitchens earlier that evening, servants whispering that several guards had unexpectedly changed posts after sunset. She had ignored it then. Palace schedules were none of her concern. Now the memory returned with uncomfortable clarity. A faint noise echoed somewhere beyond the chapel. Emily froze. Footsteps. Distant but approaching. The white wolf heard them too. It moved instantly between Emily and the doorway, placing its massive body in front of the pups. The change was startling. A moment earlier it had looked exhausted. Now it stood perfectly still, every part of it focused on the corridor. Emily held the smallest pup closer. Are those your people? The wolf did not relax. That was answer enough. The footsteps grew louder. Several people. Emily looked toward the side aisle and noticed an old wooden screen beside the altar, large enough to conceal the pups from anyone entering quickly. She moved without thinking. Come on. She carried the smallest pup behind it, and the other two followed after a moment of hesitation. The white wolf remained near the center of the chapel. You cannot stay there, Emily whispered. It looked at her as though the suggestion were absurd. Then voices reached them from outside. Search the chapel. Emily recognized the authority in the command, but not the speaker. Another voice answered, quieter. And if the Omega servants saw anything? Emily's blood turned cold. The first man paused before replying. Then she saw too much. Emily's breath caught, but she forced herself not to move. The smallest pup rested against her chest beneath the blanket, while the other two pressed close to her knees behind the wooden screen. Across the chapel, the white wolf stared at the doors. The voices outside had changed everything. These were not rescuers. They were searching for witnesses. Emily lowered her face toward the pup and whispered, Stay quiet, sweetheart. The little creature seemed to understand, settling against her as the chapel door began to move. Emily looked toward the wolf and silently begged it to hide, but it remained beneath the moonlight as if refusing to surrender the only path to the pups. 3 men entered wearing dark palace cloaks. Emily recognized the uniforms, but their silver insignias had been covered with strips of black cloth. The first man carried a lantern and swept its light across the chapel. There, he said when he noticed the white wolf. The other two stopped. None of them seemed surprised to find it. That frightened Emily more than anything. Where are the pups? One asked. The white wolf answered with a deep warning that filled the chapel. The men hesitated. They have to be here, the leader said. Check behind the altar. Emily's heart hammered. There was nowhere else to go. Behind her stood only an old stone wall and a narrow stained glass window at least 15 feet above the floor. She looked down at the 3 pups. They trusted her now. Somehow that made the decision simple. Emily gently placed the smallest beside the others and pulled the blanket around all 3. Do not move, she whispered. Then she stood. The white wolf turned sharply as Emily stepped from behind the screen. Surprise flashed through its silver eyes. The men spun toward her. Emily Carter, the leader said. She recognized him now. Lieutenant Mason Reed, an officer who sometimes supervised the night watch. He had always seemed polite in the servants' corridors. Tonight, his smile felt completely different. You should not be here. Emily kept herself between him and the screen. Neither should you. Mason's expression hardened. Where are the pups? What pups? Do not make this difficult. He took 1 step closer. The white wolf immediately moved beside Emily. Mason stopped. Emily could feel the animal's warmth against her arm, but she refused to look away from the officer. This chapel is forbidden, she said. King Adrian's orders. The king is not here. Something about the certainty in Mason's voice made Emily glance at the wolf. Those silver eyes were already watching her. A strange thought passed through her mind, impossible and yet suddenly difficult to dismiss. The eyes. The royal crest. The way these men feared the wolf without questioning why such an animal stood inside the king's private chapel. Emily remembered seeing King Adrian only twice from a distance. Tall, silent, impossible to ignore. But she remembered his eyes most clearly. Silver. Exactly like these. Mason stepped sideways, trying to see around her. Emily matched him. Move. No, the word surprised even her. Omegas in Frosthaven were expected to obey authority, especially royal officers. Emily's hands trembled, but her feet stayed planted. Mason stared at her. You would risk your position for 3 animals you know nothing about? Emily heard a tiny whimper behind the screen. They needed help. That is not your responsibility. Maybe that is why nobody helped them. Silence followed. Then the white wolf lowered its head beside Emily, not threatening her, but standing with her. Mason's face lost its color. He had understood something. Emily had not. A distant bell suddenly rang from the palace tower. Once. Twice. Then again. Mason looked toward the chapel doors in alarm. The white wolf lifted its head, and for the first time Emily saw something almost human in its expression. Recognition. Authority. Outside, dozens of footsteps thundered through the corridor. A commanding voice echoed from beyond the doors. Royal Guard. Seal every exit. Mason whispered one word under his breath. Impossible. Then the white wolf beside Emily began to glow. The silver light spread across the white wolf like moonlight moving over fresh snow, and Emily could only stare as the enormous shape beside her began to change. There was nothing frightening in the transformation, only something ancient and impossible. A shimmer of pale light that softened every edge until the wolf was gone and a man stood in its place. Emily knew him instantly. King Adrian Blackwood. His dark clothing was rumpled from whatever had happened before he reached the chapel, and exhaustion shadowed his face, but there was no mistaking the commanding stillness of the man whose presence could silence an entire royal hall. Most unmistakable were his eyes. Silver. The same eyes that had watched Emily carry the smallest pup into her arms. Emily took one stunned step backward. Your Majesty. Mason Reed had gone completely pale. The other two men lowered their gazes, suddenly uncertain. Adrian did not acknowledge their discomfort. He looked first at Emily, then toward the wooden screen protecting the pups. Are they safe? His voice was calm, but Emily heard the concern beneath it. The smallest one is weak but breathing, she answered. The other two are frightened. Adrian closed his eyes for half a second, as though those few words had returned something precious to him. When he opened them again, the softness was gone. Lieutenant Reed, explain why you entered my chapel after midnight with your insignia concealed. Mason swallowed. We received reports of an intruder, Your Majesty. You were searching for the pups. Silence. Adrian took one measured step forward. I heard you. Mason's expression tightened. Before he could answer, the main doors opened and 6 royal guards entered, led by Captain Daniel Hayes, a broad-shouldered officer Emily recognized from morning inspections. Daniel stopped when he saw Adrian and immediately bowed. Your Majesty. We received the emergency bell. Adrian nodded toward Mason and his companions. Keep these men here until I determine who gave their orders. Daniel motioned to his guards, who quietly positioned themselves near the 3 officers. No struggle followed. Somehow the calm made the moment feel even heavier. Emily turned toward the screen. One of the pups had begun making a soft, anxious sound. Adrian heard it immediately. His attention shifted from the officers to the hidden animals, and the king disappeared for a moment beneath something much simpler. Worry. Emily hurried behind the screen. The smallest pup was awake now, blinking up at her from the blanket. There you are, she whispered. Adrian crouched several feet away but did not reach for it. To Emily's surprise, he waited. May I? He asked. A king asking an Omega servant for permission should have sounded absurd. Instead, Emily understood. The pup was calm in her arms. Adrian did not want to frighten it. She nodded. He moved closer, and the other 2 pups immediately emerged from behind the screen. One pressed against his knee while the second remained beside Emily. Adrian gently rested a hand over the smallest pup's back. Relief softened his features. Emily remembered the piece of metal she had found. Your Majesty, there is something else. She picked up the royal crest and held it toward him. Adrian's expression changed the instant he saw it. Where did you find this? Caught beneath the smallest pup's fur. Adrian took the metal carefully and turned it beneath the moonlight. His jaw tightened. This is not a badge, he said. It is part of a ceremonial blade issued only to the king's inner household. Emily felt the room grow colder despite the closed doors. Then someone inside the palace was involved. Adrian looked at her, and something like approval flickered through his eyes. Yes. Behind them, Mason suddenly spoke. Your Majesty, she does not understand what she found. Emily turned. Adrian did not. Then perhaps, the king said quietly, you should explain it. Mason said nothing. Adrian rose, the small crest resting in his palm. Then the oldest pup walked past him, crossed the stone floor, and sat directly beside Emily's feet. The second followed. Finally, the smallest struggled upright in her blanket and reached toward her. Adrian stared at the 3 pups surrounding the Omega servant. His silver eyes widened with an emotion Emily could not name. That, he whispered almost to himself, should not be possible. Emily looked down at the 3 pups gathered around her and then back at Adrian. What should not be possible? The king did not answer immediately. He crouched beside the oldest pup, holding out one hand, but the little animal stayed against Emily's ankle. The second pup did the same. Even the smallest, still wrapped in the blanket, settled more peacefully when Emily touched its head. Adrian studied them with quiet disbelief. They do not trust strangers. Emily almost laughed from nerves. Neither does their guardian. For the first time, something warmer touched Adrian's expression. Apparently my judgment improved tonight. Before Emily could respond, Captain Daniel Hayes approached. Your Majesty, the eastern corridor is secure. No one leaves this wing without your permission. Adrian rose. Good. Send someone you trust for Dr. Grace Miller. Tell her only that 3 young patients need immediate care. No names, no location. Daniel nodded and quietly gave the order to one of his guards. Emily noticed Mason watching the exchange with growing unease. Adrian noticed too. Now, the king said, turning toward him, we will try again. Who sent you? Mason lifted his chin. I was following palace security protocol. Palace security protocol does not include hiding your insignia. Mason said nothing. Emily's eyes dropped to the crest in Adrian's hand. Something bothered her. She replayed the trail through the palace in her mind, remembering where each red drop had appeared. The servants' corridor. The portrait gallery. The northern passage. Your Majesty, she said carefully. The trail did not come from the main courtyard. Adrian looked at her. What do you mean? I found the first drop outside the linen gallery. If you came from outside the palace, you would have crossed the western entrance. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Unless I entered through the old chapel passage. Emily looked toward the altar. There is another entrance? There was. Adrian crossed to the stone wall behind it and pressed his palm against an engraved crescent. A narrow section of stone shifted inward, revealing a dark passage. Captain Hayes stared at it. I thought that tunnel was sealed 20 years ago. So did I. Adrian's voice became very quiet. Emily understood the implication. Someone had reopened a forgotten route into the palace, and only someone with knowledge of the royal residence could have done it. A soft whimper pulled her attention back to the pups. The smallest was shivering again. Emily knelt and wrapped the blanket closer around it. Adrian immediately returned to her side. Dr. Miller will be here soon. It needs warmth now. Emily glanced around the cold chapel and spotted several unused candles near the altar. There is a servants' warming room about 60 feet down the corridor. Adrian shook his head. Too exposed. Then we bring the warmth here. She asked Daniel for 2 lanterns and instructed another guard to bring clean blankets and warm water. No one moved at first. Emily realized why. She was an Omega servant giving instructions to royal guards. Her cheeks warmed. I am sorry. I did not mean to order anyone. Do exactly as she says, Adrian said. The guards moved immediately. Emily stared at him. Thank you. You knew what they needed before any of us did. His answer was simple, without condescension. Minutes later, the chapel began to feel warmer. Dr. Grace Miller arrived carrying a medical bag and stopped short when she saw the pups. Your Majesty, she whispered. Are these really? Adrian raised a hand. Examine them first. Grace knelt beside Emily and carefully checked each pup. After several tense minutes, she smiled. They are exhausted and frightened, but they should recover. Emily closed her eyes in relief. Beside her, Adrian released a breath he seemed to have been holding all night. Then Grace noticed the smallest pup refusing to leave Emily's arms. Her expression changed. How long has it been doing that? Since I picked it up. Grace looked at Adrian. The king became very still. Do not say it yet, he murmured. Emily looked between them. Say what? Before Grace could answer, Captain Hayes returned from the hidden passage holding a folded piece of black cloth. Your Majesty, we found this about 30 feet inside. Adrian took it and unfolded it. Embroidered in silver thread was the insignia of his private council. Mason suddenly stepped backward. Every guard turned toward him. Adrian's gaze became cold. "Lieutenant Reed," he said, "you have one final chance to tell me whose orders you were following." Mason looked toward the open chapel doors, then toward the hidden passage. Emily saw the answer in his face before he spoke. "You are looking at the wrong person, Your Majesty." Adrian's eyes narrowed. Mason swallowed. "The person who ordered this is already inside your royal council." For several seconds no one spoke. The chapel had become so quiet that Emily could hear the smallest pup breathing against the blanket in her arms. Adrian studied Mason with an expression that revealed nothing, but Emily sensed the change in him. The exhausted guardian she had first encountered was gone. The king had returned. "A name," Adrian said. Mason looked toward Captain Hayes and the guards surrounding him. "If I give you one, my family disappears before sunrise. Your family will be placed under my protection. You cannot protect them from someone who knows every door in this palace." Adrian glanced toward the hidden passage. "Then tell me which doors I should close." Mason hesitated, and Emily noticed his attention fall to the silver embroidery on the black cloth. "Not fear this time. Recognition. That insignia belongs to the inner council," Mason said. 7 people have access to it, but only one controls the old palace records. Captain Hayes stiffened. "Counselor Thomas Caldwell." Mason lowered his eyes. That was enough. Adrian turned to Daniel. "Seal Caldwell's rooms and place his staff under protection until I question them myself. Quietly. I want no rumors leaving this wing." Daniel immediately sent 2 guards into the corridor. Mason released a shaky breath. "He told us the pups were dangerous." Adrian's face remained calm. "And you believed him?" "He said they carried an unstable royal trait. He said moving them through the chapel was necessary for the safety of Frost Haven." Emily looked down at the 3 pups. Nothing about them seemed dangerous. The oldest had curled against her shoe. The second was asleep beside Adrian's coat. The smallest was watching her with sleepy blue eyes. "Why hide them at all?" she asked. Adrian's gaze moved to her. For the first time, hesitation entered his expression. "Because they are my sister's children." Emily went still. Adrian looked toward the pups. "Their mother, Princess Caroline, died last winter after a long illness. Before she passed, I promised they would remain under my protection." His voice stayed controlled, but grief lived beneath every word. "Their existence was kept private because they are next in the royal bloodline after me." Emily finally understood why someone inside the palace might want them removed from sight. Not because the pups were dangerous. Because they mattered. "Tonight I received a message claiming they had been moved from their protected residence," Adrian continued. "I followed their scent through the old passage and found them here. I did not know who I could trust, so I stayed in wolf form." "And you were guarding them alone," Emily said. Adrian met her eyes. "Until you followed the blood trail." Dr. Grace Miller finished checking the smallest pup and gently adjusted the blanket. "Your Majesty, they need rest somewhere warm and secure." Adrian nodded. "My private apartments." Grace looked surprised. All three. All 3. His gaze shifted to Emily. The smallest pup immediately tightened its paws around the edge of her sleeve when she tried to set it down. Grace gave Adrian a meaningful look. "And apparently Miss Carter should come too." Emily blinked. "I am only a servant." Adrian's expression changed at the word only. "You entered a forbidden chapel because you heard a frightened child. You stood between 3 royal pups and men whose intentions you did not understand. You noticed the blood trail, the hidden entrance, and the insignia when trained officers missed the connection." Emily lowered her eyes. "Anyone would have helped." "No," Adrian said softly. "They did not." The words settled heavily between them. Before Emily could answer, Captain Hayes returned to the chapel doorway, his face tense. "Your Majesty." Adrian turned. "Caldwell's rooms are empty. Find him." "There is something else." Daniel held out a sealed envelope bearing the Royal Council mark. "This was left on his desk addressed to you." Adrian opened it and read silently. Emily watched his expression become unreadable. "What does it say?" she asked before remembering she was speaking to a king. Adrian did not correct her. Instead, he handed the letter to Daniel. "Caldwell says the pups were never the true target. Emily felt the smallest pup stir in her arms. Adrian looked directly at her. He says tonight was designed to discover who they would choose to trust. Emily stared at Adrian, certain she had misunderstood. Choose to trust. Adrian took the letter back from Daniel and read the final lines again. His face remained controlled, but the silver in his eyes seemed brighter beneath the chapel candles. My sister believed the pups inherited something rare from our family, he said. An instinct older than rank. They respond to character before title, scent, or bloodline. Emily looked down at the smallest pup nestled against her. They are children. They were frightened. They trusted whoever helped them. Exactly, Grace said softly. Emily turned toward her. The doctor glanced at Adrian before continuing. Royal pups usually seek the strongest presence when they feel threatened. Tonight, their strongest protector was standing beside you. She nodded toward Adrian. Yet they chose you. Emily shook her head. Because I had the blanket. The oldest pup immediately rose, walked around the blanket, and leaned against her ankle. Grace almost smiled. Apparently not. Adrian folded Caldwell's letter. He knew about the old belief. He created a crisis to force the pups into revealing whom they trusted. But why? Emily asked. Because someone has been searching for a person capable of earning their loyalty without royal authority. Adrian's gaze settled on her. Emily felt suddenly exposed. She had spent years mastering the art of becoming invisible. Yet now a king, a doctor, a captain, and half a dozen guards were watching her as though she had stepped into the center of something she did not understand. I am nobody, she said. Adrian's expression hardened, though not with anger toward her. Do not confuse having no title with being nobody. The words landed more deeply than Emily expected. Before she could answer, the smallest pup stirred and reached one paw toward Adrian. He crouched beside her, and Emily carefully shifted the little creature so he could touch its head. For one quiet moment, king and servant simply watched the child between them breathe. Then Adrian said, Caldwell made one mistake. What? He believed kindness could be predicted. Emily looked at him. It cannot, Adrian continued. He could arrange the corridor, open the passage, move guards, and create confusion. He could not guarantee who would hear those pups and choose to enter a forbidden chapel. Emily remembered the first cry behind the door. She had been afraid. She had nearly walked away. I almost did not come inside. But you did. Daniel approached quietly. Your Majesty, we have secured the private apartments. We can move the pups now. Adrian nodded, then looked toward Emily. Come with us. Emily hesitated. I should return to the servants' wing. The oldest pup immediately made a small protesting sound. Adrian glanced down at it. Your argument appears to have opposition. Despite everything, Emily smiled. It vanished when she noticed Mason still standing under guard. What happens to him? Adrian followed her gaze. He will be questioned fairly. If he was deceived or threatened, that will matter. Emily studied him. The answer was not what she expected from the cold king whispered about in servants' halls. Adrian noticed her surprise. Were you expecting something else? I was told you never forgive disobedience. You disobeyed my order by entering this chapel. Emily's stomach tightened. Adrian's mouth almost curved. Tonight, I am particularly grateful that rumors about me are unreliable. Daniel opened the chapel doors. Warm lantern light spilled across the corridor. Emily carried the smallest pup while the other two followed beside Adrian. They had traveled only 20 feet when Emily felt warmth spread across her wrist. She stopped. Beneath her sleeve, a faint silver light appeared against her skin. Adrian stopped too. His expression changed completely. Grace inhaled behind them. Emily slowly pulled back her sleeve. A delicate crescent-shaped mark was forming on her wrist. What is happening? She whispered. Adrian stared at the mark, then at her, and for the first time that night, the Alpha King looked genuinely shaken. My wolf recognized you in the chapel, he said quietly. I thought exhaustion had confused my instincts. The three pups gathered around Emily's feet. Adrian's voice dropped almost to a whisper. It did not. Emily could not look away from the silver crescent on her wrist. The light was gentle, almost like moonlight resting beneath her skin. Yet everyone around her had fallen silent. "What does it mean?" she asked. Adrian seemed to choose his words carefully. "It means my wolf recognizes a bond between us." Emily's heart quickened. "A bond does not mean I belong to you." Something changed in Adrian's expression, and to her surprise it looked like approval. "No," he said. "It does not." He stepped back, deliberately giving her space. "Fate may open a door, Emily. It does not decide whether you walk through it." The answer loosened something inside her chest. All her life, rank had been used to tell her where she could stand, when she could speak, and how small she should make herself. Yet the most powerful alpha in Frosthaven was offering her something she rarely received. A choice. The smallest pup shifted sleepily in her arms, and Emily looked down as its blue eyes blinked open. They still need somewhere warm. Adrian's face softened. Then that comes first. They continued through the palace, Captain Hayes leading the way while Grace stayed close to the pups. By the time they reached Adrian's private apartments, the darkness beyond the tall windows had begun fading into the first gray light of morning. A fire was already burning in the sitting room. Emily lowered the smallest pup onto a cushioned chair near the hearth, but it immediately reached toward her again. "Apparently I am staying," she murmured. "Apparently," Adrian replied. The other two pups curled beside her feet as if the decision had already been made. Grace checked them once more and finally announced that all three needed warmth, food, and rest but were safe. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the king seemed lighter. Captain Hayes entered moments later with news that Counselor Caldwell had been stopped at the northern gate and would be questioned under royal law. Adrian gave only one instruction: make certain he is treated fairly, and protect anyone who gives testimony. Emily remembered Mason and understood what Adrian was doing. He was searching for truth, not revenge. Dawn finally broke over Frosthaven. Gold light entered through the windows and touched the crescent on Emily's wrist until it shimmered again. Adrian noticed, but he did not approach. "What happens now?" she asked. "To the pups. To all of us." Adrian looked toward his sister's children gathered around her, then toward the waking kingdom beyond the glass. "The council will learn the truth. The pups will no longer be hidden. And you will decide what happens to you." Emily frowned. "I am a palace servant. You were a palace servant yesterday. And today." Adrian walked to a nearby table and picked up a small silver key. "Today, you are the woman 3 royal children trusted when every powerful person around them had failed." He placed the key on the table between them rather than putting it into her hand. "This opens the royal family wing. If you wish to help care for them, the position is yours. If you wish to leave Frosthaven, I will make certain you can build a life wherever you choose. And if you want nothing from me at all, I will respect that too." Emily stared at the key. "Even with this mark?" Adrian looked at her wrist. "Especially because of it." The oldest pup suddenly rose and nudged the key toward Emily with its nose. The second pup followed, pressing against her ankle, while the smallest climbed sleepily into her lap. Emily laughed, quiet and surprised, and even Captain Hayes smiled from the doorway. Adrian watched her as if that sound had changed the entire room. Emily picked up the key. "I will stay for them," she said. Then she met his silver eyes. "As for everything else, you will have to earn my trust." Adrian smiled for the first time. Not the smile of a king receiving obedience, but of a man being offered a beginning. "That seems fair." Outside, morning bells rang across Frosthaven. Hours earlier, Emily Carter had followed a few drops of blood because something helpless had cried behind a forbidden door. Now 3 pups slept safely beside her. A hidden betrayal had been brought into the light, and an alpha king stood before an omega without commanding her to kneel. Adrian simply extended his hand. Emily looked at it, then placed hers in his by choice. The silver crescent warmed between them as the sun rose over Frosthaven, and this time, neither of them looked away.